Welcome, everybody, to Theory Underground. I'm your host, David McKerracher. What follows is a conversation where I assembled most of the authors in the upcoming volume published by Theory Underground Publishing called On the Left's Response to Charlie Kirk. It's a topic that I think is very important for our moment, and I think that if you're interested in this topic at all, you'll find a lot here. So I hope that you'll enjoy the call and look for this publication during its release between November 1st and 3rd on Amazon. And for those of you who are boycotting Amazon, sorry about that. We live in the world, and this is the best, fastest way to get books to most people. Though if you're in a country where it's difficult to get books off of Amazon, my apologies, and I hope that you'll be able to figure something out. All right, everybody, enjoy this conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Theory Underground, in particular, Theory Underground Publishing. Today, we're talking about the big release of an upcoming anthology on the left's response to Charlie Kirk. This anthology is obviously prompted by his recent assassination, as well as a lot of the thoughts that some of us have had in the aftermath of that, in particular, the sort of discourse surrounding it. It's been a sort of harrowing or sobering event for some of us. In my call for proposals that went out, I said that the main reason for me is that it means that we've entered a new era, right? David Duke was the grand wizard of the KKK. We always knew about him as some kind of loony, kooky guy. Nobody tried to assassinate him that I'm aware of. And if somebody had assassinated him 10 years ago, there would not have been so much open celebration and sort of pageantry dunking on him. It would have been a lot more concern about, okay, what's going on here, guys? Just because he's crazy or racist doesn't mean you get to kill him. But it does seem like this new era we're entering is one where if you disagree with people on something that is part of the progressive checklist of things that you're supposed to believe, you're not going to just get called a Nazi or a fascist or a racist or what have you, which obviously is great, and everybody has the right to call people whatever they want, right? But no, this is now showing us that there's something more concerning, which is that people might celebrate you the way they celebrated Luigi Mangione, right? And for some people, the shooting of the United Health CEO by Mangione feels very different from this shooting. And I would argue it is different. It's qualitatively different, but at the same time, people today can't tell the difference between these qualitative distinctions. And so that makes what we're doing a little bit more precarious, a little bit more dangerous. And so it's a time to be thinking about the world in which we find ourselves. I'll just say one last note before I turn it over here to folks who are going to be in the anthology. And that is why on the left's response, as opposed to just the cultural response or, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Those could have been titles as well. But it's specifically on the left's response because it is the left that has, from my standpoint, and I say this in the call for proposals, radical responsibility because it wants to change the world the most. And it wants to change that world the most for the most people, supposedly. Because of that, those aspirations, the nobility of those aspirations, it has an extra heavy responsibility, not just for what it actually does or says, but also for how it is perceived or interpreted. And so the idea of radical responsibility here is that radicals, this would include right-wing radicals, but basically anybody who wants to radically change things, has a little bit of extra heavy lifting to do, a sort of burden of proof to bear, um, not just for their explicit changes that they want to make, but also kind of for their mode of comportment, their way of being, their I just want to say, like, how you're sending messages, how those messages are being received, and more importantly, the predictable reactions that those messages are going to receive or set off from people, right? And so for some people, maybe who are listening to this, tuning into this, watching it, uh, maybe you didn't see a whole lot of that. There are obviously going to be people who have been more or less kind of tuned out from a lot of this. And maybe you only see some stuff from legacy media institutions. Maybe you just read the week, or you watch MSNBC or Fox News, or, well, okay, if you watch Fox News, then you definitely heard a lot of the, the stuff that the left was saying in the aftermath of the assassination. But if you're just watching MSNBC, chances are it's a lot more like, oh, hey, we shouldn't be killing people, but also you see Charlie was really, he was he was really antagonistic. He was really stirring the pot. So dot dot dot, and the ellipses leaves us to conclude, so he kind of had it coming. He was sort of asking for it, right? Well, I put out the call for proposals. A lot of amazing people responded. Most notably, as far as like famous people who talk about politics, Slavoj Žižek and Michael Tracy stand out as people who put their opinions out on political things all the time and are probably going to bring a lot of eyeballs to this volume, which is really cool. And so thank you guys for your contributions. But at Theory Underground, the point of bringing in bigger authors is to kind of highlight some of us nobodies doing work in the underground, to kind of highlight our work, our contributions, because underground thinkers, workers with earbuds, people who are getting to big ideas, doing their own research, autodidacts, etc., or also rogue academics who work with us. Um, we've got things to say, and it's nice to have a little platform from which to say them. And platforms, you can use them if they're offered by an institution. You can use them if they're offered by like YouTube. You can use them if they're offered by Amazon KDP publishing, right? Like there's all kinds of ways to make a platform. I've built a platform up here on the hill from which we did those Agora presentations, those proto Agora presentations, right? Matthew was there, Alex was there, they both presented. Kira was also there. And you can build a literal or figurative platform, but really what makes a platform is not just that you are able to speak, but it's also that there will be some kind of audience who's able to listen or read you. And so I think the most important audience is us. And that's why we're able to set up a serious sort of platform, is like we come together to listen to each other. But also there's a lot of people who are going to come out of the woodwork to tune into big ideas because they are thinking about the last response to Charlie Kirk. And so people who help signal boost this volume are helping sort of give us platform. And I kind of course, cringe at the idea of giving platform because it's usually in relation to people talking about the justified causes for taking away someone's platform. But as underground theorists, we build our own. And if somebody like Slavoj Žižek is able to work with us and signal boost us because he just says, you know what, fuck it, I will help these guys. Well, that's fantastic. And we love it. So thank you, Slavoj, for helping get our voices out there, for bringing more eyeballs to our work that nobody otherwise would be able to see. And so with that said, Kier's not, I don't think, present for this. And so I'll just say that it was a combination of two pieces by two women in the last 2 months that got my attention and made me realize that all of the thoughts I was having about this Charlie Kirk thing actually, you know what, they relate to some of the other ideas people that I have conversations with are also having. And the first of those two people was Anne, my wife, who's currently pretty much inoperable. I'm not sure if she's going to be able to really say much because of morning sickness. But she, maybe I'll cut that part out. I'm not sure if that's public information yet or not, but she is pregnant. And we're very excited to be parents. But she wrote a piece when she was working on this other volume that we're publishing at the same time as the Kirk anthology. It's volume 2 of Underground Theory. And she actually stopped the work she was doing to write a piece about Charlie Kirk. And it's called "We Have to Stop Calling Everything Fascist." And in that piece, she goes through and systematically debunks claim after claim after claim that was being made about Charlie Kirk based off of things that he supposedly said, which were usually things that he actually did say, but those were being taken out of context. Like people saying, oh, well, he doesn't trust a black woman piloting a plane. No, that's not what he said. He said DEI literally makes you have to question, well, do they actually know what they're doing? DEI is making you have to think that. And then he says, I don't want to think that when I walk onto a plane, but that's what DEI makes people think. That's what he said. So that's the kind of context that Anne brings to all these different quotes. Like people say, oh, well, he's against empathy. Well, no, he's for sympathy and he prioritizes sympathy over empathy. That doesn't mean he's anti empathy. He just says that empathy shouldn't be the full story of your politics. You should also practice sympathy, which is trying to understand intellectually where someone's coming from, not just feeling where they're coming from. So Anne does this amazing piece. She put it on her Substack. It's her first piece on her Substack. You should all definitely go check that out, and you'll definitely see it in this volume. But it was reading that got me really excited and made me go, okay, if she's all in on writing about this right now, I'm definitely feeling it. And then just at the TU retreat up on the hill behind me here, Kirk's talk that was at the time called Neither Left Nor Right, which is now called Beyond the Echo Chamber or After the Echo Chamber. I forget the exact title. In it, she starts off by saying that she she's been thinking about Charlie Kirk, and then she talks about the reception of it a bit. And she says that 10 years ago she would have celebrated his death, right? And it's a powerful speech that is being transcribed and is going to appear in this volume. It was the combination of that speech and Anne's piece that I found really inspirational, and the conversations that we were all having at the retreat kind of related to this as well. And so I thought, okay, let's just get this out there. The last time I've made a public intervention on this level was the conference responding to Jordan Peterson. It's an opportunity to engage with someone who's getting a lot of attention at the moment and to, yeah, bring the audience to some idea you're thinking deeper about. That's really what it's about. And so with that, I want to bring this over to everybody else. And I think Elton's is a great sort of jumping off point, and then Angel's. So Elton and then Angel, and then everyone can kind of just raise their hands and we'll go in order of the hands that I see raised. But I want to start with Elton and Angel because you guys both, you talk about personal, immediate sort of anecdotes, actual things that you experience. And I think a lot of us will relate to it. It'll be generative to hear you both go first. So Elton, let's start with you. And you can say something about yourself and the work, every one of you, when you go, you can say something about the work that you do, how you got into this or whatever. You don't have to, but kind of just whatever you want to say. And you can take a full 5 minutes to say it if you like. Yep.
Okay, you bet. Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about, the opportunity to participate in this. It's a unusual topic for me. My background, like I've done work on the National Political Education Committee of the Democratic Socialists of America. And I grew up Christian and still identify as a Christian. And I've done some work with Dave on a number of things, including teaching class on the professional managerial class. I was talking to Dave about my experience. My wife and I went to the Oregon coast recently and stayed at an Airbnb. And while we were there, we're mostly like disconnected from the internet and the media. So I really didn't know anything about about Charlie Kirk being assassinated other than our Airbnb host saying something, asking if we'd known about it. And, I write about this in the piece, but, in short, she was a really nice lady and we really connected with her. She's an artist. My wife's an artist. She had a, amazing place to stay on the coast that really gave us a break from, the stress that we have been going through the last couple of years. But it was interesting, we'd had a number of conversations about politics prior to that. So I think she felt comfortable with us, and, she definitely gave one of those responses of kind of like, this guy, Charlie Kirk, he had it coming. She really didn't say much more than that. She maybe went into that a little bit further. But it really was in line with what Dave was already saying, that, he was an agitator, and in the conditions, that we're living in today, it's not a surprise to see somebody like that get assassinated. It was before we knew anything about the shooter at that point, but I, I don't have too much to say about the, what the significance of this is, other than just I recognize that I don't think 10 years ago we would have heard that, even 5 years ago, but 10 years ago, that this woman would have been, like expressing, some of the joy and relief that she was expressing. She was a pretty normal lady. She, had certainly an education, and, was liberal, and was surprisingly comfortable expressing, like, just some joy that this guy was no longer going to be spreading a message of hate. That for me, I didn't have much to say in that moment, but I've thought some about it, and I think it's been specifically significant for me that, like right before he was assassinated, I think I'd been listening to a podcast, leftist podcast, and they were just kind of acknowledging that Turning Point and Charlie Kirk really had a significantly greater following than, almost any leftist. That Charlie Kirk had, a bigger influence and was really connecting with people in a way that people on the left do not. Some of this is just because it's less academic, even anti-intellectual. But I think the fact that Charlie Kirk is a Christian, and specifically evangelical, means that he's connecting with people in a way that many people on the left are not able to. In fact, it feels like, there's no room for evangelicals on the left. And, obviously, like, LGBTQ struggle is crucial and important to the left today. I believe that, entirely. But I also believe that the left will continue to be marginal. The socialist struggle, like I mentioned before, I'm a member of Democratic Socialists of America. DSA will continue to be marginal if we do not build trust and support in the working class. And I think Charlie Kirk reaches evangelical members of the working class, and those outside of the evangelical Christians in a way that we should be learning from. Like I heard a speech that Charlie Kirk gave to trades, so like roofing and construction, that kind of stuff. And it was an interesting talk because like I think there was a lot of ways in which Charlie Kirk was doing class politics way better than most people on the left that I hear. He had a lot of Christian theology that he was communicating that I was, very disturbed by. But nonetheless, he came across as having good faith, and he even had a disagreement with a lot of the people in the audience. Specifically, honestly, a lot in construction. A lot of those people were pro-immigration because, some of those people are like small business owners who hire immigrants and, have built relationship with those immigrants. And even a lot of the people that were listening to him in the trades were immigrants and were able to have a healthy conversation with Charlie Kirk about the disagreements that they had about Charlie Kirk's stance on immigration. I think that there was stuff there that was worth understanding. So my piece is really more than anything trying to propose that the left should be willing to have some self-reflection. What was it that Charlie Kirk had that was able to connect with the working class better than a lot of us on the left? Go ahead, Angel.
Say
Hey,
Shelton.
thank you. Yeah, so my piece was about like a conversation I overheard eavesdropping on a bus in London. And I guess I wrote it because it was easy at the time to just think like everyone is going crazy online and it's just how leftists or whatever behave online. But the fact that I overheard what I heard like in such a public space, I felt was important to document because yeah, I feel like that's kind of a gaslighting tactic that people use to be like, is this online phenomenon like people celebrating? But a bus is such a like public situation for people to be kind of gloating about it. Um, and I feel like already like even though I wrote it, I don't know, like a month ago, there's already kind of a vibe shift where I don't know, I feel like it's kind of similar to when George Floyd was killed and like it's like you kind of had to be there in the moment on the internet to see what was exactly happening. And then it changes so quickly that it's easy to revise it and be like, I don't know. Because like when George Floyd was killed, it was a similar thing of like extreme weird hysteria online that I feel like the same people I know that posted certain things don't act like they posted such things. And I'm already seeing this with Charlie Kirk where, and it's only been like a month, where I feel like I don't know. I already feel it's a little bit more taboo to post the things that they were doing. But in the literal minutes in the aftermath, I saw what I saw, and it was like kind of en masse. I felt like celebration, like from people of my age, like early 20s. Um, so yeah, I was kind of like motivated to write it to acknowledge that that was happening, because things quickly change, and I feel like there's already been a bit of a tide shift on that. But on the bus, what I heard was just like these three guys kind of making many jokes, kind of celebratory, and I was just like deeply disturbed. So that was that to just document that. So yeah, that's all really.
I can go next. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Elton. Yeah, pivoting on the word disturbing, like, my piece is titled Playing with Kirk, or just Play with Kirk. And I think he made spaces for individuals to play with ideas, whether in the name of their group or just, for their own cause. And I'm very much inspired by the work of the cohort of OG Rose and their writings, discussions on concept of childhood. And I think childhood and play coincide with each other. And bit of a, I don't know, hypothetical, but I don't think most children would celebrate the death of someone. And it's very disturbing to have that be a common thing that came about with left-leaning folk. And in my piece, it's kind of just a grappling point, perhaps towards, climbing to more points in the question of play, and how can that, how can that be reminded and brought into a space where, real material concerns are in the conversation, and also people grappling with identities and the importance of group advocacy. And it's this grappling of seriousness and play. And when people celebrate somebody who made spaces for those to challenge Charlie's either the face of conservative talking points or just Charlie himself, it feels like all the people who thought and celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk were very much of a sort of hyper, or the epitome of like a somebody who's watching a game and they perhaps have never played the game, or it's just a very, a spectatorship, and they get super hyped and they have their face paint on and they have all the flags and all that. And that hype is just, it's so real, but it's detached. And but the person who is spectating believes that if they, talk to the screen nicely or not nice, like there's an interaction there, there's a connection there. And I perhaps would overlay that phenomenon with what we see here, which is the, the hype around Charlie being assassinated, the spectatorship, this like it's, I don't know, I find it disgusting to say it this way, but it's, it's kind of how I see it. It's like, oh, what a play, what a good move, finally this guy's removed from the game, and now we can move on to better things, because this guy who's a part of this team, he was just ruining the game, and just blah blah blah. And it's just this I don't know, gamification, and the people who are in the spectators online, they they play the game, they do a drafting sort of version of the game, they have their online role playing of the game, to which connects to the one that's actually happening in public spaces. And perhaps there's a confusion there, perhaps there's a not sure if bringing in the term hyper real is appropriate, but it's with that, in my piece, I exclaim that, you know, those who are in the spectator position and are, you know, looking at their television sets, their phones, and, you know, yelling or giving commentary or saying, you know what, I would have done this, and I am actually a better player because I have hindsight, blah, blah, blah. I I'm perhaps talking to those people that they need to get out onto the field. They need to practice their reps, their routines. They need to actually be acquainted with the players in the sport, in the game, and actually play the game. Maybe not on such an official scale, but just you know, imagine yourself in Charlie's position where you are playing the game, you have serious convictions, and you are trying to create spaces where you can have your ideas entertain and grapple with others in this space. And someone in the audience, as you're performing, thinks to themselves, man, I don't like this person playing this game. They're ruining the whole game. And then they come up with their own ideas to remove you from the game, eliminate you from the game. And yeah, it's I don't know, just think about that. And what does that do to those who want to play and those who are playing? It's doesn't make me want to play that game. But, you know, we got to keep playing. And it's kind of where my thought is revolving around. And I think it's important to, you know, perhaps be a little playful and not eliminate people from the game. You know, perhaps we can shake hands and meet up next week for another game. So that's
Thanks,
what my
Alex.
piece is about. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty good seg into my piece as well. Thank you for those thoughts, Alex. And early on in my piece, I compare what Robinson allegedly did to basically playing on a Twitch stream with his friends. My argument in my piece, the non-ideological shooter, is focusing on the rise of these shooters who don't have any sort of a coherent ideology, and how I see that as a result of it's produced by the medium of the internet itself. This spectatorship that you're talking about is an alienation from a shared social world of difference with other people, and it produces radicals without a direction. Basically, it's just sort of the pure form of radicalism itself that can be activated and pushed in any sort of direction, intentionally or mostly unintentionally. It's just creating sleeper cells that don't even realize that they have been radicalized, but they've been radicalized because they've been so alienated from the basic consequences and structure of acting in meat space. So I focus on Robinson as basically my provocative oversimplification is that he was radicalized by furry porn. So I think that like his form of radicalization is not ideological. He has this anti-fascist flavor to it, but it's inflected through the anti-fascism of video games and memes on Discord shared amongst, you know, militant trans community. To me, there's not like a coherent ideology here, and that's the thing that's scary, is that it's just pure nihilistic drive. As we see, we saw this with the Minneapolis shooter recently. Their journals that we found, it's this mixture of like drawings of demons and writing in Cyrillic and cries for help and anti-Semitic slurs and pro-Palestinian slogans. It's like you put politics into a blender and just blended it. And I mean, I think that we can go. I think that if we keep going back, we can see these figures like Adam Lanza of the Sandy Hook shootings, even kind of the event of the Columbine shooting. These non-ideological events, we have to understand them not necessarily as a product of politics itself, but as what happens when the subject that's produced by the medium of the internet encounters our current political situation. It produces these events and moments. And I think that to some extent, the people who seed the memes out into the internet that can connect with these radical subjects without an ideological orientation, I think that some of them understand what they're doing and some of them don't. But I think that people need to realize more of their responsibility for the internet radicalizes people in a non-ideological way. It just produces radicalized subjects ready to act in ways that are unexpected and violent because the way that because they are alienated from the frictions of the real world, and they can't share a social world with different subjects. And so if you're putting things out there into this world of like, you know, Charlie Kirk is a Nazi, is a fascist, is a nationalist, as a Christian nationalist, as a transphobe, when you say these things over and over again, of course, in public, you can walk it back and you say, it was an analogy. I would never tell people to kill people. There's always a level of plausible deniability. But when you operate in an environment that produces radicalized subjects, you have to realize that your words are going to be taken up and used in ways that, yeah, you can always deny responsibility for. But you do bear a responsibility for your actions within the environments. So, but I ultimately, at the end of the piece, I'm basically saying I think that both parties do cultivate this to an extent, and that ultimately, I think that our elite want this kind of situation. I know it's controversial to reference Sam Francis, but his idea of anarcho-tyranny is so helpful here. This idea that those who are law-abiding citizens are over-policed and those who break the law and social norms are under-policed in order to create chaos. This chaos then creates an opportunity for whether it's leftists to step in or if it's no. You got. That is very dangerous. Do not touch that. Sorry, guys. My son just opened a propane tank. Don't tell CPS.
An opportunity for leftists or for kids to go full anarcho like Judah was about to. Right?
Yeah, so, like, you know, some radicalization. We got some anarcho tyranny in this backyard right now, so I had to step in and lay down the law there. So the basic argument here is just that the cultivation of chaos is obviously non-ideological because it's a creation of a state of chaos. It's a creation of an opening up of kind of like a space of heterogeneous signs, and that it can be taken in lots of different directions. And I think that ultimately you'll either have the people demand some sort of a strong figure to come in and to quash the chaos, whether that's going to be a rightist figure or it's going to be a leftist collectivist bureaucracy elite that's going to come in and they're going to use that as an opportunity to push through changes and things that they want. So yeah, that's kind of my take on the non-ideological shooter as a product of the internet as a medium.
Thank you. That was awesome.
I think Ruiz's is a good one to build off of. Alex's as well.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. You're right about that. Trying to get the camera on here. So basically I wasn't going to say anything because that's kind of I consider myself kind of a freshman here at TU. I don't really have much to say just yet, but there was something about the way that this kind of unfolded with the call for papers and the fact that we had the retreat, and I got to meet so many of you and have conversations with you all, and kind of the way that I had kind of been following this stuff as, like, you know, I consider myself very much normie, and I think I'm still maybe normie plus at best. But the fact that I was able to have so many great conversations at the retreat with you all, a part of me is still kind of surprised at how great those were, just because it's like, will I have anything interesting to contribute? Will I understand anything that they're talking about? And it's like, it was such a great experience. And then I thought to myself, like, what would I contribute to this? I mean, what exactly, like, what can I possibly add to anything that these guys are already saying? But then I just thought, just why not? You know, I felt like I've been following this stuff long enough to say what I think is happening. And even if I don't feel like what I just said in this piece is something that actually makes any sense, and, you know, I can make adjustments from there. But it's just kind of an honor to kind of be in a book with all you guys. And I didn't even know Zizek was in the piece, in the anthology, to be honest with you. It's more about everybody else that was going to be in there. But I thought I do want to say something along with those guys, along with everyone that's in this piece. And then as far as my piece itself goes, you know, the few pieces that I've gotten to read, obviously Ann and Dave's, but then more so with Matthew and Solowski's piece that I was able to read, that I was able to peer review, and listening to Kier's Kier's talk that the piece is based off of, and talking to Alex about his piece. It really just felt even more so like I did the right thing, because it does feel like there's a lot of things that I'm saying that I feel like they're saying, but I am kind of adding my own little slant to it. So that's been real encouraging for me. And then it just, as far as the situation itself, it just feels like when I started following along with this stuff maybe 15 years ago, I had just kind of come out of the fact that I started my life as a Republican, you know, just from being raised as a Republican. And then as soon as I switched over onto the Democratic side, I thought, Jesus, this side's kind of full of shit too. So it's like, okay, so great. Now what? So then after that kind of happens, where you kind of don't have kind of like that foundation anymore, you kind of wander around to like all sorts of things. You know, you get the Joe Rogans, and then you find the Jordan Petersons, and then you find the Chomskys, and you find Richard Wolff and all those kind of guys, you know, Thomas Sowell. Like, you just bounce around all over the place. And then around that time is when kind of like the social media and all this stuff was already kind of being introduced to us. And as someone who had been exposed to like Neil Postman around this time as well, I kind of thought like stuff was already kind of fractured and kind of unorganized and kind of hectic. So the fact that the internet is kind of doing this to us now is definitely not surprising at all. But it was still shocking. I mean, let me be honest with this part. Once the Charlie Kirk assassination happened, I mean, the moment that happened, you knew that this was going to be a huge deal. Like, there was something instantly that got thrown up into the air that was like, this is a big deal. And then to see the reactions that came out afterwards, and the fact that, as someone who comes from like a sporting background, it very much felt like people were cheering on certain things. Like, you know, I know that this is kind of like aimed more toward the left's response, but I mean, it just feels like it's so related, the way that kind of like everybody was just cheering this on more of as like my team, your team, black and white. This is how it is. These are our slogans. These are kind of like, we're very excited about this. It almost felt like a championship that was won for some people, which is pretty terrifying. And I know that anti-intellectualism is definitely a thing, but this felt like something else. Like this felt like almost like it felt like we had crossed a certain threshold that it's just like, man, I do want to say something. And I'm proud of the fact that I did, and I'm proud of the fact that I'm doing so alongside so many brilliant people that I've met through Theory Underground. So yeah, I'm really excited for the book to come out, and I'm real excited to talk to you guys further about your pieces and to see where this conversation goes. But it definitely feels like an interesting conversation is going to come out of this. So I'm very glad to have been a part of it. So thanks to you, and thanks to all you for the inspiration, for sure.
Ruiz, I just want to say, a lot of the stuff that you just said, the meta stuff about the sort of process of thinking about whether you were going to write a piece for this or not, and sort of how the retreat kind of gave you that sense of like, oh, this will actually work, which is really cool. And so really quick, I want to say, for anybody who's got to leave first, if you got to leave like really soon and you haven't said something yet, go ahead and raise your hand. You'll be next. I know there's a couple people that are about to leave, but we still have some time. But what I want to say really quickly here is that a couple of the people not present for this call, um, one of them is the anonymous professor. So there's an anonymous professor who wrote a piece. The other one is Michael Tracy. Both of their pieces are a lot more critical of the right and its response. And I did keep that for the obvious reason that this is not. Well, I guess it's not that obvious, so I should say something about it. The right's response is important here. It's just not the leading sort of thread, right? But with that said, it's like without understanding how the right is using the assassination of Charlie Kirk critically, I think that the left is not going to be able to really think like how this has backfired, this response. The right is using this to crack down in the most repressive ways ever, right? So the anonymous professor is talking about, yeah, sure, the left already made it so that you felt like you couldn't speak freely at the university, and now the right has doubled down on that and is using this event to fire professors who are critical of Charlie Kirk, right? So what about free speech now, right? And so this professor's someone who just feels completely stifled in academia, by both left and right, but is primarily focused on Trumpism and how Trumpism is using this. Same with Michael Tracy's piece about how this is like a great example of state religion, right? If you pay attention to the aftermath of the assassination and you're listening to Trump or you're listening to some of the people in his cabinet, it comes across like they're being very opportunistic with this, and they're literally saying that his death is a sacrifice for the movement, and that and they use it as their just cause to do all kinds of crazy stuff. So there's a lot there that I thought I'd touch on for the people not present, and I think that you'll all get a lot from reading that. But having not seen anybody raise their hands yet, I'm assuming nobody has to rush out who hasn't already spoken. And so it's just about everybody said something now who's present. But Solosky wrote a piece about the left's response. And I liked it a lot because it was focusing on sort of the left media space. And so I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Solosky, but yeah, I would love to hear from you next.
Hey guys, can you hear me? I'm not very good at this. So basically, if you can hear me, I hope you can. I was just trying to address normies, or maybe normie plus, like Ruiz said, because even though, Trump kind of initiated the whole world into politics when he came along, there's still a lot of people getting into it and trying to get information. And my thing, since I got to TU, so to speak, was, okay, what does this mean? Who is that guy? What is all this stuff, you know? And I just wanted to get that down before I even begin to speak on anything. So I don't know, clarity has always been what I've been after. And now this is like, it was already bad as far as people understanding who is who and what means what. But this is just, furries equal Karl Marx now, and like another speaker said, I think it was Angel, you were talking about people. I'm assuming you're in the UK getting all worked up about George Floyd, and you got to think like, well, why the hell would some dude in the UK care about that? Like some black guy getting killed in the US. That's insane. And the same thing goes for like people here celebrating the Queen dying. Like, what do you care? She won already, And then on top of that, it's just, I don't know, people are extremely angry. And I don't know if they're like thinking that, okay, I just learned about politics and here's how you do it. You go online and you yell at people. That's where they're at. It is, if they even know about any of this. Like I said, too, in my piece, I've asked some people, they don't know who this guy is. But what they are going to know is what they see on Fox News or CNN. And they're either going to sign off on that or, I mean, I don't even know, but they're going to believe what they're told. I have some little notes here. Matthew Stanley, he just mentioned how it's cultivated. It absolutely is. Every time somebody says something nasty or maybe even takes a shot, Fox is immediately there to say, okay, this is communism. According to Kamala, Trump is a communist. According to Trump, Kamala is a communist. It's just shitloads of confusion, and I'm really, really sick of it. And there are those trendy people on either side who you try to ask questions, you try to say something, and they roll up their cool kid newspaper and bop you on the nose for even trying. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it, and it's not working. Rent is up, gas is up, electricity is up, and everybody wants to, be confused while yelling. And I had enough of it. And I just wanted to be direct in my piece too. I wanted everybody to kind of be able to be like, yeah, that's what's going on. I could have elaborated more on other stuff, but I felt like I would have made a mess if I had done that. So I just tried to be like, nope, knock it off, focus. This is what's going on. And yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but that's it. I hope you guys heard any of this. I'm bad with Zoom.
Thank you, Solowski.
Yeah, we heard you good. Also, I said I was tending a fire. Look at this freaking thing. This fire is awesome. Not like the dumpster fire of the internet that we're responding to. This is just like an actual good fire. So anyway, thanks everybody. I think that's literally all of us so far. And so I know we're going to probably close it out relatively soon, but I want to give you all a moment to raise your hand if you have a question for any of the other contributors or for me, or if you just want to say something to the general audience. And that general audience, I feel like, is represented here pretty well. At least when I think of the general audience, the people I think of, they're a lot like a lot of you all. And so, if there's something that's worth addressing, you think, yeah, go ahead and raise your hand. Nobody has raised their hands. We've all pretty much organically been able to take turns, but I want to make sure that as I close out, I don't, miss somebody. So definitely raise it, because otherwise I will just close out. It's not a threat. It's a promise. So, all right. I want to touch on a couple things. One is obviously there are real implications for the kinds of policies that Charlie Kirk was advocating for. In fact, this sort of line that, oh, he was just some guy. actually really undermines the significance of this event. So, the BreadTuber account, Three Arrows, the left anarchist account, put out a video essay somebody shared with me on the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and it's a response to a few things. In particular, one of the main ones at the beginning there is Shoe on Head, who's a sort of cultural and political commentator account. She used to be into Bernie. Now she's not really a leftist very much, or like I don't know, she's critical of feminism and stuff like that. I don't follow a lot of her content, but people like the Three Arrows account. I would typically disagree with people like him or like Sean about a variety of issues, and that's why I don't tend to tune into those video essays very often. I did back in the day, obviously, for anybody who knows much about the trajectory of my work. But it was kind of refreshing to get a sort of a committed leftist perspective on the situation. And I'll just say a couple things about it. The thing that he takes Shoe on Head to task for is for basically being like, he got killed for speaking his mind. People are acting like he was a fascist. He was just sharing his opinions, though. It was just ideas, guys. And Three Arrows is like, okay, I'm not out here saying that speech is violence, that having the wrong opinions means that you should be killed. But can we cut this shit and stop acting like this is not real? There's real stuff going on here. He was advocating for real policies. He wasn't just pro-abortion, or sorry, pro-life. He was so anti-abortion that he's against abortion in all cases. In all cases, which is, by the way, way more extreme than Trump, way more extreme than a lot of Republicans today. That's a pretty extreme case to just be so against abortion that you say, even in the case of incest or rape, or the mother is going to die. I'm against it. I'm against it. I'm against it. And no abortion, no abortion, no abortion. It's murder, and the doctor should be prosecuted. That's an extreme position, and I thought it was kind of worth pointing out from that perspective. I'm glad that he said it. However, I also think that Three Arrows really overstates the case by going deep into detail about a really, really tragic case where you had a mother who knew that the pregnancy wasn't viable, the baby didn't have essential organs, and she was forced for months under that knowledge to still carry the pregnancy to term. And he really embellishes that story. And then, once the baby was born, here's the grandfather and the father and the mother, and they're holding this baby that they had to like watch it die. Basically, it's very tragic. And his embellishment of the story is like a great rhetorical maneuver. Using Alex Tappington's idea of games. If the game is rhetoric and political debate, Charlie Kirk was really good at that game, and so is Three Arrows. It's easy to take something like that and then go, okay, see, so he's advocating for policies. These policies have a real chance of actually changing things that will make life worse for people like that mother and those parents in that situation. So we're not saying words are violence, but we're saying that they can definitely lead to extremely violent or tragic outcomes for large amounts of people. And so then that brings us back to Alex's piece about, can we talk about this as games? Can we talk about this as games, considering the fact that there's real implications, real situations? And it's like, well, part of his piece, first of all, was to say, yeah, political, economic, social conditions matter. But for the sake of talking about this, I want to think about games. We're going to just kind of bracket that stuff and focus on it as games. And you know, so I'm all on board with that, and I think that his self-awareness and choice there is very important. But I did just want to say, for people listening to this, thinking about it, and kind of thinking, well, is it games? I want to say, well, here's the thing: it is games, even when there's real implications or consequences for the things that you believe. There's still a game. Okay, it might be a game of life and death. There might be real stakes. There might be real consequences, but that doesn't make it any less of a game. And then going to pure Bourdieu, as I like to, I did earlier in my lecture today. You know, Bourdieu is going to say, for a field to be a field proper, for it to be one where there's, or if it's one where there's serious symbolic capital at stake, to be won or lost, then to be a genuine participant in that game, to really do well at that game, it actually requires the illusio, the illusion, the libidinal seduction, the libidinal attachment to that game that stops seeing it as a game and treats it as a game of life and death. And you can think of like how there's like that sort of, you know, people say toxic element of a fandom where that ruins it for everyone else. They gatekeep and they shut people down and they even like will ruin the fun for the creators of the whatever it is that they're fans of. But also that is just the nature of games. The better a game, the more likely there will be people who just that it is their life. You know, it's a matter of life and death for them. Politics adds a sort of legitimation narrative to that. We're all playing a game. It's the yapping game on the internet, or it's the theorizing stuff on the internet and reading books. There's that game. But once you put the label political on it, we've now got more of a legitimation narrative in support of us treating it like a game of life and death. So all games have the toxic fandoms, but specifically the political one gives people this sense that, well, yeah, but for us, it's actually real, though. It really is real. It really is a matter of life and death. And even though there are those of us for whom this is like literally our lives, this is everything to us. It's also like, yeah, but it still is like a game. And then I think what Alex really highlights, though, is that there is the fact that it's like a game, and then there's also the fact that the people who kind of want to cheat at this game and also act like this game is a Colosseum, like gladiator match in ancient Rome, you know, losing their minds, cheering for their side or whatever. That in a sort of sense, like they want to play the game we're playing, but they're not actually playing the game we're playing. There's a confusion of fields here. There's activism, there's academia, and there's the attention economy. And these are three giant fields that all have subfields and subdisciplines. And all of those things are different, but then they're all clashing in the sort of hyper-real postmodern spectacle. And we find ourselves in it. And so, I don't know, I think it's worth pointing out that like you can't really have fun at a game if you don't really realize that you're playing the game. And even if that game has real stakes or consequences, and if there's actually something real to be won or lost in it, doesn't that doesn't mean it's any less of a game. So I think that was really worth thinking about. Ruiz's piece goes into comedy and talks about how this is sort of a great example of how political and fragmented comedy has become. He does a lot of other stuff in that piece, but that's how it relates to this in the way that I'm thinking about. And then my own piece is, well, there's the call for proposals, which is public already. And then the only other thing that I'm going to say right now is just like when it comes to the meaning of Charlie Kirk, I'm especially interested in the dehumanization. And this will bring me back to the point Three Arrows was critiquing with Shoe on Head, helping me wrap this all up. Okay. You know, Charlie's not just some guy. He had millions, hundreds of millions of dollars behind him. He had the largest political youth organization in the U.S. He was a huge advocate for Trump. Wrote a very popular book about Trump called The Trump Doctrine. TPUSA is on every college campus. They have tons of free merch that they give everybody because they get all of this funding. So it's not just a guy. He is actively a political player, and a very powerful and prominent one at that. And so people who are acting like he's just some guy might be missing all of that. But at the same time, though, that Three Arrows wants to say he's not just some guy. He had all this power and sort of reach and all of this other stuff. I do want to say the point that Shoe on Head was getting at that I actually agree with, and it's actually super powerful. She just doesn't really elaborate it too much. I think she just mainly takes it for granted and then just says it and moves on. Is that, he's some guy like your uncle, like your cousin, like your neighbor, like your coworker. Okay. And then she kind of moves on. And then Three Arrows like, no, that's not true. Well, okay, yeah. If you want to be strictly literal and go, actually, well, then yeah, for sure, he's not that guy. But Shoe on Head's point is that's what he represented. He represents that guy. We all know that guy. We all know someone like that guy. That guy is just a guy. Charlie Kirk represents that guy. And if you read the Trump Doctrine, which I haven't, but I've read enough of it to be able to say what I'm about to say. He talks about how Trump has shown everybody that we're beyond this scolding approach that tells everybody how they're going to live their lives. And that if Trump proves anything, he proves that Americans feel slighted and like they're over it. They're over being told how to live their lives. They're done with the moralizing scolding. And that the Trump Doctrine is basically, let's stop with that. And whenever it's happening, call it out. And not just call it out, but like literally blow it off. Laugh it off, roll your eyes, gish gallop it, talk right through it, say absurd things, blow through, bluster. It doesn't matter. The point is we're over that. He said, Charlie said, this was years ago when he wrote the book, he says the American people are over it. And a lot of Americans who voted for Trump would have never voted for any Republican ever. But here all of a sudden they're voting for Republican. Let's stop assuming it's just racism. A lot of the people who voted for Obama and then voted for Trump, or then voted for Biden or Bernie, and then once again voted for Trump. These people, they're not really understood by Democrats or the broader left, right? In a lot of ways, it's just a resentment against this sort of discursive Taylorist PNC. Well, Charlie was speaking to and for such people. And I think what Elton was saying at the beginning is that those people are being reached better by the right than the left. And obviously the funding might be a big part of it, having so much more funding behind you. But also, it's just true. Like the DSA is like deliberately minoritarian, like so extremely minoritarian in the name of not being tailist, which is a whole other thing we can't really get into right now. It's just, oh yeah, no, it's never going to speak to or for most people, right? There's nothing really democratic about that spirit of being anti-common sentiment and against really just the American rebel spirit that says, stop telling me how to live my life, right? Now, obviously, guys like Charlie do, to some extent, still tell you how to live your life. Trump's policies still come down and have something to do with how you're going to live your life. But it's about tone, it's about optics, it's about a general attitude, and it's people who have a problem with it and call it populism, and then they take up an issue with populism. Though there's like always a baby in that bathwater, of course. There's also what's noble about that rebellious American spirit, that sort of populist sentiment of just like, get off my back, stop telling me how to be. And when Shuon has said that, he's just some guy, what she's really getting at is that that's his whole success, is trying to speak to and for some guy, that guy, just some guy who's disenfranchised by the two-party system. So, yeah, I think that's important, and we shouldn't miss it. And it relates to my piece about Levinas and the memeing of Charlie Kirk, in which I talk about how it's not a coincidence that the person who was the most defaced on the internet, the person whose face was literally memed by just pinching it and distorting it or bloating it, is the first person in the prominent political pundit sphere to be assassinated in our lifetimes. And I say it's no coincidence because making political cartoons has always been a form of dehumanization. It's also just fun. It's a game. It's just fun. It's a game. It's just memes. And so who cares, right? But if you look at World War I or World War II propaganda posters, often where the sort of racial stereotypes were blown out of proportion. Like if you take a media class on that, you're going to hear about how that propaganda's function was to dehumanize the enemy. When the online left lost its ability to engage critically in a mature manner, if it ever had that, I don't know if it ever really had that ability, but when it was definitely lost, I think the sort of canary in the coal mine, or the tell, if you've been paying attention, was just the fact that instead of ever actually engaging Charlie Kirk on anything that he had to say, all they would do is take his face and then pinch the eyes, the nose, and the mouth to make it smaller and make the forehead larger so that he looks silly. And then that's it. It's defacement. And it speaks to a kind of incompetence, an incompetence to engage in a mature way. It's like, we don't have anything to say. We know we're right. We know he's wrong. He's bad. Let's just meme him. But then it's like, I love memes. The thing about memes, though, is that they're supposed to be funny or fun. I just genuinely don't understand what's so funny or fun about pinching someone's face. It's like, what's the joke? The joke is that he's attractive and you made him not attractive. Look, he's a traditionally attractive white male. Let's make him look stupid. Ha 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 ha, what a great joke. It's like, so the implication of your joke is that he actually doesn't look the way that you keep making him look. Like, I get thumbnails taking people out of context to look silly and then using that for react content for, like, I've had people who love hate watch my content, who take stills of my face when I look silly, and then they post that. And it's like, okay, great. Very mature. But it's one thing to do that just for a thumbnail or just for, like, between you and your friend. But it's another thing when it's like someone of that prominence. And it's something I wanted to think about, because yeah, everyone memes everybody and takes people's faces and words out of context and blows them out of proportion. But nobody did that to anybody as much or as literally as Kirk. It was literal, not just figurative. And Emmanuel Levinas has a philosophy of the face where the exterior face kind of gets in the way of the actual human expression, the noble, sovereign human that is there on the other side of the visage, the appearance, the plastic face. And when you reduce somebody to a cartoon or that plastic visage, so that you can just easily dismiss them, you are dehumanizing the face of the other in a Levinasian sense. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that he was the first to actually go to get assassinated, nor do I think that it's surprising that people were reacting the way that they were, considering the fact that he's been so systematically dehumanized. And so I just hope that all of this ultimately is a call for us to double down on humanizing other people, even if they are powerful political pundit people representing giant organizations, insofar as that, especially when they speak for your average Joe, or at least when they try to and have some serious success in their attempts, I think that it really, really doesn't benefit anybody to dehumanize them, because we all know regular people. And if regular people are dumb enough to feel represented by somebody like Charlie, well, they're going to feel dumb enough to feel personally implicated or attacked when you dehumanize him for the last decade, which has literally been going on. And then how much more so when someone assassinates him and everyone starts cheering. So that's where I'm coming from. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm really excited for this volume. I really am stoked about all your pieces. This thing will be published November 1st, and yeah, I'm freaking stoked about it. But someone's got their hands up, and so let's go. Is it Luke?
It is me. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I really liked everybody's like talk. And Angel, I read your piece, and there's like a disgusted Eastern European man. Your piece also ends with it, so maybe it will be fun to put Zizek after your piece in the anthology. Just maybe.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. He was like my solidarity while I was listening to this conversation. Like I felt this solidarity, but it was this kind of weird thing of like we were both the silent ones. Do you know what I mean? Like the loudest voices were the like shitty normie kind of like gloating thing, but the Eastern European man, I felt like solidarity, even though we didn't interact like at all.
So there were no other people on the bus then, only the guys and the.
Well, I think there was. It wasn't like that full, but there was others. But like I feel like he's the only one I observed also hearing it, if you know what I mean. I feel like other people were
Yeah.
further away where I wasn't noticing them.
right. So was that the guy that moved? You thought he got off the bus, but he actually moved to the back of the bus so that he didn't have to hear that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's me on the internet. I just don't try to really follow, but that's also why this piece spoke to me. Like here, also in the Netherlands, like all of a sudden people, also in real life, are like talking
Yeah,
about
it was the fact that it was just like they were just doing the exact same. They were talking internetly, but it's not as funny in real life. It like I feel like I'm not above like finding memes about Charlie Kirk funny potentially, but when they are funny, it's because they're visual or like you're alone looking at them or something. Like it's hard to find them as callous when you're, even though I did like certain of them.
Yeah,
but there's a specificness to like saying those memes as verbal jokes. Like it was so gross, so unfunny and disturbing at the same time. I don't know. Yeah, doesn't hit the same. Yeah.
I wanted to put a point on all the discussion about games because I think it's really apt. And I think what we're going through is we're going through a shift in the game that we're playing as a society. I read a pretty detailed book earlier this year about how religious toleration first developed in Northern Europe. And it's a pretty significant social achievement to develop a system where people with competing metaphysical beliefs can coexist together in society. Very few societies have developed this outside of an empire context where there was just one empire that was like in the Roman context where they're like, hey, here's our state religion. We impose it and you can follow your own religion as long as you basically pay lip service to our religion. Religious toleration was an attempt to move beyond even this. And I think we've been enjoying a very strange epoch in history where we're playing the toleration game, where people can actually disagree about fundamental things, and that there's some sort of abstract mediating game that allows us to work through those differences. And we are going through in real time a shift away from that game into older games, the older game that we used to play as human beings, where if I disagree with you, now I can kill you, or I can go after your family and your friends. And I think that people don't fully realize how historically strange the game we were playing was and how fragile it was. and that as we move away from it, it's going to be increasingly difficult to ever get that game back. And we may not realize what we lost until we've lost it.
That was kind of where I was going with part of what I was trying to say about the three arrows and Shuon had disagreement. The game changing, I think a sign of it is how three arrows really embellishes the example of someone who's forced to carry a pregnancy to term, even though it's not viable. And it's just like, oh, the pain, the suffering, the watching that child die because it was born without lungs, like that whole, you know, thing. It's like the reason Three Arrows plays that up is so that we know there is something real. There's real stakes. There's real consequences. So he's not advocating for the violence, but he is kind of saying, you see, there is, there's real violent consequences to saying the kinds of things that Charlie's saying. Three Arrows never even considers the fact that if you had a different metaphysical set of assumptions, then we are in the midst of one of the most systematic yet under talked about genocides, specifically an infanticide, that's ever been known in human history. Because abortion has never been this routine, this normal. And if you have a different set of metaphysical assumptions, abortion is more murder. Those babies have souls, and you're actually killing them. And so, it's like that you're in a sort of leftist echo chamber if people don't ever point out that, first of all, that could be literally true. Metaphysically, everything is still kind of up for question. We don't know a lot of stuff, but also, just like if you don't know people who genuinely believe that this is infanticide that's occurring, because that abortion is literally a regime of infanticide, then maybe it's easy to talk about an extreme, like, awful case where someone not being able to abort led to something tragic, and then be like, see. But what you're missing is that for all those people who are like, no, but that's real murder, the normalizing discourse you're engaging in is basically saying that those people should be able to kill you for advocating for pro-choice policies, because it's, from their metaphysical standpoint, murder. Right? Is that the world you want to live in? Because in that world, those people are the ones with the guns, by the way. The right wingers are the ones with the actual guns, and they think that this is actually murder. They're not making that up. It's not trivial. They don't say that just because of ideology, or like, they genuinely believe it. And so, yeah, Matthew, I think that's kind of what it gets us to. It's like we haven't had a lot of serious assassinations done by right wingers to liberals in this country because they advocate for pro-choice policies. But yeah, if we're just going to normalize that, well, based off of my metaphysics and my ethics, if you're doing harm, well, then I can kill you. Then yeah, it's not going to be a pretty world. It's not good. Looks like Solosky and Ruiz have their hands up. I think Ruiz first.
Yeah, I just wanted to return kind of to like the memes and kind of like trying to be funny. And I always thought the memes were kind of like missing the point, because I always put, I mean, obviously, I think by now it's been pretty clear that I put comedy at like a pretty high, I hold comedy at pretty high regard. Like George Carlin to me is just as valuable as someone like Neil Postman or any other philosopher that I've read. Which is kind of why I get a little bit disturbed by like the memes, like the one that Dave's pointing out with Charlie Kirk's face. I mean, there's no kind of like, they're not addressing anything with those types of jokes. Trump little hands and DeSantis on platform shoes, like all these little like lowbrow kind of, not even lowbrow, Like they're just childish, stupid jokes that don't really point to anything. Um, and just I think that there's something important about satire, which satire itself doesn't point the finger at the other person or ridicule the other person so much as it kind of points the finger back at all of us, kind of like in a way to point out how we're all maybe being stupid or missing something important. Um, I think we're losing something with these like simple stupid memes that are just kind of like dehumanizing. And um I think South Park did a good job with the recent episode they did on Charlie Kirk. I saw that episode before and I revisited it afterwards. And there was something that they tried to do in that I didn't notice the first time I saw it, which was they were almost aggressively trying to humanize Charlie Kirk, which I hadn't noticed when I first watched the episode. Um, but I did go back and watch it just to see like what was in there, and it was just crazy to me like how much they really were trying to humanize Charlie Kirk. And it reminded me of a previous episode they did on like influencers, where like the influencers were basically in like I forget what it was that happened, but the influencers were in danger because they were like under like so much pressure from their sponsors and their sponsors weren't letting them off the hook. And I felt like they were kind of like it was almost like they saw almost how captured Charlie Kirk was before any of this stuff actually came out. And I'm not saying that they knew anything about his life being in danger, but it is interesting the fact that for whatever reason they were really trying to humanize him in that episode. And I think that's maybe a good example of what comedy can be used for. But I agree 100% with what Dave is saying about like these dehumanizing stupid posts. And I had never associated the memes of today with and that style to like those old school comic strips that were in newspapers where they were just trying to like dehumanize like Jewish people or Russians or Chinese. Like I had never put that together, but that does make a lot of sense. And it's like for as high as I hold comedy and I hold comedy in high regard, like I just said, it definitely it's not something that it's a weapon that can be used for good or evil. So it's not like it just always will be. I mean, a lot of people think that, oh, it's funny, so this must be a good message. It's like, no, sometimes it's very dehumanizing and it is offensive and it is all the things that we say that it isn't. So I think that's a great point, Dave, that you're making with the dehumanizing.
All right, Solowski.
Hey, I think I finally figured this out. Okay, so
Hey.
what I was thinking was that, as far as like a normie's reception of a lefty or of a Charlie Kirk, even though they're like normies, they're uninitiated, there's different kinds of normies. And like they come with, prepackaged code. And to see a Charlie Kirk, not even really know him, just kind of hear a little bit of what he has to say, they just know they want nothing to do with it. And the same thing goes for other kind of normies that might hear some comedy talk about whatever. But, like I said, with Trump kind of initiating everybody, now they have to kind of take a crash course into what they think they believe. You know what I mean? To figure out what all this internet shit is. And then the internet teaches them. And now you have, and I have, a conservative friend, liberal friend. We were fine years ago, back when. Now that the scales fell from everybody's eyes, so to speak, in a way, now they have to fight with each other. Even if they aren't really initiated in Marx or John Locke or anything. They just know, oh, we're very different, actually. And we always have been. And we shouldn't be talking to each other. I don't think that's good. With DeSantis and his platform shoes, wasn't he the one that signed off on the barbed wire on the coastline to catch immigrants trying to swim in? Make a meme about that evil shit, not his shoes. I don't care about his shoes. You know what I mean? And then as far as humor goes, there is a famous comedian, I won't mention who, but he recently had a famous right-wing dude on, a pro-life dude on, and he just played with him, like Alex, like you talk about, and the XY axis and all that good stuff. He did a great job, and he actually humanized this dude, who is otherwise, pretty repugnant, whether you're initiated or not, and I think, yeah, that's the ticket. There was another piece in all this. I think it was Jacob's. It was something to do with like hang out with your lonely uncle. And I think you should do what Alex is saying with your lonely uncle. Like get them to laugh, get them to calm down, try to talk to them, try to teach them what you can as accurately as you can. And that's it.
All right, guys. I got to close this thing out so that I can go drive the tractor and put bigger loads of stuff on the fire and see how big I can make these flames, because it's fun and it's officially cold enough and wet enough that I can do that without having to worry about burning the forest down. So I'm going to go do that. Appreciate you all. Look for the book coming out November 1st. It might, because we pushed the go live button, sometimes it takes up to 78 hours. It could be November 3rd before it's actually available, but look for it at the beginning of November. To everybody, thank you. And if you're here in the call, go ahead and hang out after we're done recording. We'll do something less formal. But with that, peace.
If you want to help support Theory Underground or access all of the past courses at TU, as well as have special behind the scenes access to the seminars and stuff that's coming next year, there's going to be a lot of really cool course content. Well, hundreds of hours is really what you're talking about getting access to by becoming a member at TU. But some people become members just because they want to help support. Some people become members just because they want to be a part of this, because it's a cool emerging tendency in the theory scene. People who are trying to work and think and do things different. And if that's interesting to you, sign up today at theoryunderground.com/subscribe.